Hey there, emerging expat. You're tuned in to Let's Move to Portugal. I'm Victoria from Expats Everywhere's podcast, and I have the distinct honor of bringing you, YouTube travelers, and our resident Portugal experts, Expats Everywhere's Josh and Kaylee. Each week they'll inspire, they'll educate, and they'll accompany you on your journey to Portuguese residency. This week on Let's Move to Portugal, Victoria shares her experience of living in Portugal as an expat from Canada, discussing the differences between Porto and Lisbon, the process of obtaining citizenship, and her unexpected romance in Porto.
Hey, expats and travelers alike, welcome back to Expats Everywhere presents Let's Move to Portugal podcast. Kaylee, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I should have jumped in there and asked you first. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. Doing really well. It's a little cooler here in Porto today. Not cool, but cooler because it has been warm.
Yeah.
Or as you like to say, warm.
Warm. It is. Arm with a W. Warm. But it hasn't been like too bad. I think it was worse down in Lisbon. Like they got into the 90s when we were only like, it was still mid 80s here.
Yeah. And friends that live in Braga also told us that it was in the 90s there.
Yeah.
So
they get hot there.
Yeah. So if you're doing Celsius, sorry.
Look it up. I don't know. I'm like a ballpark kind of Fahrenheit Celsius converter.
I am too. So I don't just want to throw something out there and be wrong.
Okay.
All right. So if you're new here, welcome. We're really glad to have you. And for the next 5 to 10 minutes, probably closer to 10, we're going to get you caught up on what's happening in the world of expats everywhere. And if you don't want to listen to us go on, then you can just cut straight to the chase. We've left chapters if you're listening on YouTube. And if you're just listening to the audio version,
You're stuck.
You're stuck. No, I mean, you can obviously skip ahead a bunch of times. Somewhere around the 10-minute mark, the actual interview will start. But
Yes. And it's a good one.
yeah.
Victoria, not our producer.
I actually haven't listened to it, but I know Victoria and I know her personality.
Yeah.
She's live.
Yeah, it was a really interesting one. She's obviously really well spoken. She has her own podcast. We met her at the gym a long time ago.
We did.
She's from Canada and has an interesting story as to how she came to Portugal. You were going to say something. You're like this big gasp.
Well, you know, it's really funny because I struggle with this. I'm quite friendly, right?
Yeah.
And I saw her.
You talk to strangers.
I talk to strangers, yes. And
is that friendly or weird? I don't know.
Why? You be the judge. So, we're in the gym and, I'm a married man. I don't know her status.
Thank you.
I don't know her status, but sometimes I do feel awkward, like as a guy going up and talking to a girl in the gym because I don't want them to think I'm hitting on them.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
But what happened? I forgot you had seen her a couple times.
Yeah. I mean, I had seen her obviously at the gym.
Portuguese?
That I don't know.
Okay.
I had just seen her like out on the streets because I don't know exactly where she lives, but I felt like we lived close.
Yeah, because we were going to the same gym that closed, but that was kind of in the downtown area.
Yeah.
Anyway, but you first talked to her there, or you saw her on the streets? Or we just
No, I talked to her there, saying like, "Oh, we've passed each other on the streets a couple of times. I just wanted to say hi. My name's Josh. What's your life story?" In between sets.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that is how we initially met, but then we've ended up at a lot of different events together as well, some mutual friends too. And she has since got married, which we talk about. It's an interesting story. She met her now husband here.
Basically what it was is I saw her and I was like, you're an athlete and you look like a collegiate athlete.
That's right. And
you know what I mean?
Was, yeah.
Yeah. And I was like,
she played volleyball.
Let's chat.
Yeah.
Because that stuff
Athletes
just interests me.
unite.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, you've got to meet my wife. She was a collegiate athlete too.
That's what it is. Thanks. You threw that in there really early on, right? You're married.
No, I absolutely did.
So you didn't seem like you're hitting on it?
I have to there's that and just, lower the guard a bit.
Yeah. And I'm guessing like you're lifting, so you're not wearing your ring, right?
No,
either.
No, I don't. No, I definitely don't like to lift my ring on.
No.
Scuff it up.
Yeah. Actually, with my little one ring, I had a little bit of a crack. I've got 3 rings that I wear, and one is thin.
This is a good story relating to Portugal.
Yeah, exactly. And so it had a little bit of a crack. We have a friend, a Portuguese friend, who knows a jeweler. So I got my rings replated before already through them. So I was comfortable there. So I was like, I wrote her and I was like, can you help out here? And she's like, okay, I don't know how much it is. And anyway, long story short, he melded it, I think is what you call it. Melded it.
Yeah, sure.
Put it together and then replated it for me again. So it's all nice and pretty and ready to go. And it was only €25.
25 euros. I mean, Unreal.
Good deal. Anyway,
Great deal.
we can talk about Victoria towards the end here, but like what's going on with the world of expats everywhere.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, we've actually had like some funny stuff just kind of happening with the channel. As a couple weeks ago, we put out a video about Singapore, and we were like, "What is going on?" Like this video absolutely tanked straight out of the gate, and we knew because like we've been talking quite a bit about Portugal and Spain on the main channel that anything that's not Portugal and Spain is just not going to hit with the audience. And then I guess it was like on Saturday, I'm looking at analytics and the video starts to pick up.
Yeah.
Like it's like YouTube finally figured out that this does not need to be delivered to people that are interested in Spain and Portugal, but there's this whole other audience in some other corner of the YouTube world that might enjoy it. And it's doing really well now.
Yeah.
So
that's encouraging.
Long may that continue.
Yeah. And then
YouTube's a funny game.
Yeah. This past Saturday, we put out an interview of someone who lives here.
Yep.
So that's always good. I think it's fun interviewing people and just kind of seeing what their experiences are and how they made it here and where they live and everything.
Yeah, I think one thing that maybe we're not doing enough on the main channel is like stuff about our own lives. And maybe part of that is because we get to do that and connect with you all here on the podcast. So sometimes we feel like this is our outlet. But I think people on the main channel that don't even know this podcast exists kind of need to have touch points with us as well.
Yeah, but sometimes those are hit or miss,
like,
though. You know what I mean? Like sometimes those don't do very well either. It's almost like people are like, I don't want to watch that.
Yeah,
whatever that might be. Oh, but that being said, well, I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking more like vloggy stuff. But I don't know if we're going to do something about food around Porto, but I don't know if that's going to be very vloggy style. I think it's still going to be informational to help with the different, like the variety of like what kinds of foods there are, but then also like what's available for those who are gluten-free, vegan, vegetarian.
Which we're none of those. So we're having to source other people's
we have a really good
information that are like into that scene, if you will.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
whether they choose to or their body chose for them.
There is that. There is that.
Mm-hmm.
They would love a carb. But
you still get carbs, but yeah, gluten.
Sorry.
Yeah.
They would love a certain type of carb.
I guess. Some of them don't even know what they're missing, though. So they're happy with it. I think the gluten-free game has really picked up, though. Like, I think probably from like 10 years ago.
Oh, massive.
Yeah. I mean, we've got friends now who have found gluten-free beer here on tap as well.
Yes.
So it's not just in the bottle or can.
Well, it's even like the whole vegetarian vegan scene when we first moved to Spain. And I mean, it existed like this in Portugal as well, where you would ask someone, or actually you would tell a waiter or waitress what your dietary restriction was, and they just wouldn't even know.
They wouldn't even know what that meant.
Like if you said, I'm vegan, and they're like,
huh?
Cool.
You're in Spain.
Cool. They're like, cool. We've got egg dishes. We've got fish dishes. Yeah. Like, don't worry about it. And you're like, I don't eat any of the animal products.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
That is true. That's funny.
And very quickly, like in a foreign language, that type of stuff can get lost in translation.
Mm-hmm. This is very true.
It's just the word they don't even know. You know what I mean? But it happens in English too, where someone doesn't understand the difference between vegetarian and vegan.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's gotten better here. Even being here almost 5 years, we've seen like options pop up on restaurants that don't claim to be one or the other, but then actual full-on restaurants that are vegan or vegetarian.
Yeah,
more of those.
I think the downside to it all, and this is something to just prepare yourself for, and we'll probably address it in that video as well, is the cost. Mm-hmm. So it's just, I think like in the US as well, or Canada, it's just more expensive.
Yeah.
It's a more expensive lifestyle. I don't know why, like vegetables are really cheap here.
Right.
But I don't get it. If you know why, like vegan and vegetarianism is more expensive.
But that's like how come when you go someplace, brunch seems to be more expensive?
Yeah, you just put brunch on it. Like you could have a lunch place, but when you put the B involved, like at the front, they charge an extra 5 to 10 euros.
Yeah.
It's
well,
so
like
strange.
we were just talking about how we're eating like avocado toast and eggs and every morning. It's like we don't need to go out and get like a 13 euro avocado toast. We have it at home
every day.
Trying to get that protein in.
We're changing our diet up. We're prioritizing protein. yeah, we got to lose weight after that cruise. So
Okay, but anyway, so things
Yeah.
are going well with the channel. I
Yes.
think that's pretty much the update. That's kind of some stuff coming up, but
well,
yeah.
we're also in the festival season. Like,
Yes,
so
so
yesterday
fun.
we just went to Sechalbes en Festa, I believe is the name of it. So that's an annual thing. And then coming up this weekend is the, help me out here, Friday's the Maya Beer Market.
Well, over the weekend. There's two going on this weekend. The Maya Beer Market and then the Essencia, like one of the wine festivals.
Yeah,
is this
the
weekend
Vina
as well.
Verde Festival.
So
we hit up that last year and had an absolute blast.
Yeah. That's
We're
all
also
fun.
going to Coimbra for our Arsenal Portugal annual general meeting,
assembly.
AGM.
And then also I took Sia on Friday with a friend to like a festival in Matosinhos. They had like it was more like a fair. Well, they had all sorts of things, but that had actual rides and everything. So there's a lot of that going on too around. But man, those rides get pricey.
They get expensive.
Yeah, nothing is just €1 for a ride.
Not
it's
anymore.
At least $2.
Not anymore.
Yeah, not
I
anymore.
mean, the first 2 years maybe.
Yeah, not
It'd be
anymore
like
though.
€1 ride. Yeah,
not anymore though. Or even like the blow up bouncy, not the bouncy castle, but like the blow up whole
Ball
thing they
pit,
can do. No,
whatever.
that's in
Yeah,
there.
it's
There's
like
like
a
the size of that
playground.
big thing that they get 10 minutes in there, but it's €5.
that went up from last year.
Surprise, yeah.
I think it
Josh
was either
wasn't there.
3 or 4 last year.
Yeah.
Now it's 5.
At least they get 10 minutes in there and they're active.
But you didn't
I
let
do
her
like
do that.
She did. That's what she chose.
That's
her
what she
own
spent.
money. Yeah.
So she did one thing.
On her own money, that one, yeah.
Oh, on her own money.
Yeah.
She spent €5 of her own money?
Yes, for that.
Oh, I thought she just spent our money.
No, she spent.
I'm sorry we're having this conversation with you
Sia
right
has
now.
started to do chores and kind
Yes.
of become responsible with how money is. And so I told her that she had a certain amount that I would spend. And then we brought her own money and she could spend what she wanted on there. I think she brought €8
I
and she spent
misunderstood
5 of
that.
her
She
own.
spent.
And it was on that. That's not bad though.
Okay.
And then she came home and did dishes and got €1.
Okay.
So she's still making money. Anyway, okay, I think we're rambling and we've gone pretty long.
We're not rambling. We're letting you know about life
Life.
in Portugal. But yeah, I mean that's kind of the update, right?
Yeah.
Weather's great. No
Festival
rain.
season,
Festival season.
fun stuff.
Raising kids.
Yeah.
Kid.
Boom.
Raising kid.
Yeah, kid. Okay, but yes, let's talk with Victoria and her story.
All right, let's do it.
All right, but before we do that, let's talk about this week's sponsor, Green Ocean Global Advisors.
Yes, we always recommend, no matter where you are in the moving process, to get your finances in order. So that's in your home country and then the country that you're moving to.
And speaking about homes, what if you sell your house before leaving or do it after? What are the capital gains implications like? Well, a financial advisor will be able to walk you through this type of thing.
And what about distributions? Maybe you have a 401k or a pension and you need to figure out how much you should be drawing from for the lifestyle that you're going to have.
Now, you can use this link in the description section below to talk to John from Green Ocean Global Advisors to see if he's a fit for you. You'll have a free 15-minute consultation just for being an Expats Everywhere listener. So you can use that to get your free 15 minutes. Click the link in the description section below. Now, on to the show.
Victoria, thanks so much for joining us today on the podcast. I'm really excited to talk to you because you moved here in 2021. So you've actually seen Porto and Portugal change a lot. And I want to talk about that. But before we get to those changes and everything, tell us why you ended up moving and what your journey was like to actually get to Portugal.
Yeah, so it's been a journey. I used to live in Canada. I'm Canadian. I used to work for L'Oreal at the head office and worked that corporate life for several years, you know, getting off the subway, going into work and just being like, oh my God, is this it? And just feeling like my soul was being sucked from me. And so after doing that for some time, I eventually had a bit of a dramatic rock bottom moment and decided to do a bit of an eat, pray, love thing. And so I sold everything I owned and quit my job and bought a one-way ticket to Bali. So that's where I kind of started off my journey. And this was back in 2018. So at the time, it wasn't really a thing to be like a digital nomad, or it wasn't really talked about to be living in other countries as commonly as now, especially post-pandemic. But that's really kind of what kicked it off for me. And then during the pandemic, the borders of Bali closed and I found myself back in Canada for my mom's wedding and I couldn't get back into Asia. So I said, okay, where next? And at the time, to be honest, Lisbon wasn't really on my radar. I wasn't really thinking about Portugal as a country, but it was atop of like a digital nomad list. Same thing that had happened with Bali. It was like the top place to go to meet other people who had that kind of wanted to live a different life. And so bought another one-way ticket to Lisbon, telling my mom, I don't know if I'll be there for 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years. Don't know. We're going to figure it out on the way. And yeah, I got to Lisbon and I really loved it. I loved the European lifestyle. I loved that everything felt a little bit slower, the good and the bad. As people will probably find out when they get here, the process of getting visas and everything can be quite difficult because there is a slower pace of life, but it's also nice. They really don't have that kind of to-go coffee cup culture here. It's slower, it's more intentional. And so I'd been living in Lisbon and then had a really strong feeling that I should go to Porto for the weekend, where I met my now husband, who is Brazilian Portuguese. So we've been living here, like you said, since 2021. Yeah. So it's been some time, but that was kind of my journey to get here.
Amazing. Yeah. Okay. So when you decided to do the one-way ticket to Bali, did your family freak out? Were they like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Or is it like, oh, don't worry, she'll be back in a couple weeks? So what were they thinking?
Oh my goodness. So my family works in healthcare. So they were doing a psych eval on me. They were like, do you have racing thoughts? Are you sleeping at night? And I was like, I'm just so excited. Like, I feel like I'm alive again. Like, I feel like finally this dam burst and I can finally start living instead of just like the 2 weeks of vacation or whatever you'd get on your job, which was just like, I felt like I was strangling me. And so it's funny because I'm like, I probably did sound a bit manic in that sense because I was just so excited finally for the first time in so many years. But no, they were deeply concerned. They were very worried. I was moving across the world by myself with no real plan, didn't really have any money. And I was like, I'm going to figure it out. And thankfully I did. There's so many resources available, like, yours for moving to Portugal and for expats. And in Bali, there was so many resources for people in Facebook groups. So I always say it's like a great tip if someone's moving to a new place. If you can't find resources like yours, join the Facebook groups and ask questions and search the comments because people have gone through it before and you're going to get so much value from it, whether it be which dentist to go to, how to actually book the right type of appointment to get your visa and all those kind of things.
Mm-hmm. I always find it interesting when you talk to people about like what their families think, because sometimes it's like my family thinks I'm crazy. Others are like, they're like, go for it. Some who have kids, they're like, my kids are excited to visit. You do it first and then we'll come visit. So it's like we have a place to stay. So I always think it's interesting to see like how families process it. Cause like when Josh and I moved abroad, his family, like for the first at least 5 years, they were like, when are you coming home? And I do air quotes, when are you coming home? When are you coming home? And it would be kind of like, home is where we are, whatever country we're in, that's what we make our home. So even when we decided like, okay, we want to start having kids, we had to say, we're not moving back to the US when we have kids. So, because a lot of people will be like, oh, get it out of your system before you have kids and then you'll come back. And I guess do the whole like white picket fence thing, which is for some people, but like it definitely wasn't for us, And we were like, what? We see loads of people having kids in different countries and traveling with kids. So we're like, we're doing that. So we had to be like, okay, we are not coming back to the US just because we're having kids. So like kind of prepping them. But I think, yeah, after we moved to Saudi Arabia or told them we were moving there, his family stopped asking when we're coming back. They're like, okay, I guess they're just doing this,
Yeah. And then they get to play, like they get to visit, right? So like such a win for them, not only, I mean, it's tough, right? Because it's this dichotomy of you get to live this different life and it's super exciting and you get to really be intentional about the life you want to create to yourself instead of one that can often feel handed to you back where you kind of grew up or where you ended up with your job. So it's very intentional in that way, but at the same time, it can be so difficult and so lonely, and it can be really I think some people underestimate how difficult it can be to live away from home. Thankfully, now there's things like FaceTime and flights are cheaper than they've been in a long time. But it's still very tough, and you do miss your family and you do miss home. And so it's hard, but they do have a place to visit at least. Yeah.
Yeah. And you definitely have to be intentional about keeping in touch because it's really easy. And that's, whether you're across the ocean, across the world, or in, like Canada or the US or in a different state, like you still have to be intentional about talking to people, using your phone to actually, communicate. Because if you're not like right down the road where you would run into each other at the grocery store, be able to see each other daily, like you have to be intentional. So that's another thing too, is like, it's hard sometimes with friends, like life gets busy, even with family, life just gets going and you think, oh gosh, I haven't talked to so-and-so in a couple weeks, I need to like circle back and see how they're doing. So it's like definitely intentionality is important.
Yeah, absolutely. It's otherwise you just realize you haven't talked to people in so many years, and especially if you're changing phone numbers, and it's just like, oh my gosh, yeah, you really have to think about who you want in your life and show up for that, because otherwise it's so easy to lose people as you're moving
Mm-hmm.
countries or moving to Portugal.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you were kind of in like the rat race. You were really busy with work. It was a corporate job. So I'm guessing you were working crazy hours. You were working your buns off and just were like, oh my gosh, like I have no time for myself, or like what was that feeling like? You said it was like kind of suffocating, but like talk a little more about like how you got into that job and then why you were ultimately like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, so it was funny. I graduated with economics, went to go get my master's in economics, and realized and then wanted to get my PhD then go to the United Nations and work there. But I was doing all these things because I thought they sounded good. I wasn't doing it because I actually truly, genuinely wanted to. And so when I was starting to get my master's of econ, I was like, okay, this is not the life I want. And quit that, found myself living in Montreal. And if people know Montreal in the dead of winter, it's really freaking cold. So I was like, I have no money, I have no job. What am I going to do? And I was at a volleyball tournament because I played volleyball in the States for university. And I was basically just complaining to people that had no job, I didn't know what I was doing. And they set me up with a recruiter, which was great. And then I found myself working at L'Oreal, which is like one of the biggest beauty brands in the world, if not the biggest, the next week, which was insane because people had been killing themselves with internships to try to get into this job. And I came in this kind of backdoor way. It was very bizarre, but it was the type of job that people dreamed about, in the sense it sounded really cool, which at the time for me, I was very much, if I check all the boxes on the outside, then I'll finally feel good on the inside, which, spoiler alert, is not how it works.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was working this super fancy job. I was dressing up every day. It was very Vogue kind of vibes. I was the project coordinator for L'Oreal Paris for Canada. So it was very high pressure. It was long hours. It was a lot. But everyone was like, oh my God, you work there. That's so amazing. And so to have all this external validation of this is such an amazing job. I had the apartment. I had a good partner. At the time, I was deep in struggles with food and body, eating disorders. So at the time, I quote unquote had the body I thought I should want to be happy. And so again, I had ticked every single box that had been told by society will make me feel valued and worthy and lovable and good enough and happy and fulfilled. And yet I'd never felt so empty and so confused and so anxious. And I was like, what's going on? I've been sold this idea, and yet here I am, and it's not anything like I thought it'd be. And so even though I had this rock bottom kind of moment, and that kind of led into recovery for myself, it wasn't that moment that I was like, okay, I'm quitting my job. It didn't all kind of come together that quickly. And many of us, it doesn't. We could have a realization that this isn't working, but it's still going to take time to get to the place where we can actually take that leap, because it is a leap, right? We're going into the unknown. And it's not because it's something bad. It's just scary, right? Our brain doesn't like things that are unfamiliar. It's like, we don't know how it's going to pan out. The whole devil you know is better than the devil you don't know, according to our brain. And so it's scary. It's a lot. But for myself, when I was going through that recovery process, I learned a lot more about myself and how I'd been performing the way I thought life should be, instead of actually showing up for who I was and leaning into those values. And so much of who I was I wanted to explore. I wanted to see the world and discover who I was. And I always told myself, like, I can always go back and work a corporate job. I can always go back and try that life again. But I don't always have the opportunity now to go and see the world and see what it has to offer me and see where that takes me. And so I gave my notice at work. My family thought I was losing my mind. I had someone take over my apartment, bought a one-way ticket, and the rest has been history. I've never regretted it. It was the best decision I've ever made. It hasn't always been easy, that's for sure, but it's always been worth it.
Yeah, and you never really know until you try, right? Like you said, you can always go back, you can always adjust. And like, okay, so you went to Bali and then you were back in Canada for your mom's wedding. The pandemic hit, and so you had to adjust. And then Portugal was where you adjusted to for the next place. And okay, so you landed in Lisbon because you saw it on a list, and that's why you're like, let's do Lisbon.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. I think that especially at that time, Lisbon was like the main one. Porto and some other cities now have come onto the map a bit. But especially with like Lisbon raising in prices and everything. So I think for a digital nomad, it might be a little harder for especially housing, I would say. So you landed in Lisbon. So you just came on a one-way ticket on your normal tourist visa. and
Yep.
you're like, let's just see what happens.
Totally. So in my mind, I was like, I have 3 months to figure out, what's going to work or not work or where I'm off to next. I had genuinely no idea if I was going to stay here or if I was going to go. But when I landed in Lisbon, the cool thing about Portugal is there's an amazing expat community. And the thing I love about, one of the things I love, there's many things I love about living abroad, is that there's so much community because everyone has left their home behind. They've left all their friends and everything. So it's easier to get into these groups and find connections versus back home where it's like they all grew up with those people. They've all worked with those people. So it's harder to break into friendship groups. But here there's a lot of events going on. There's a lot of meetups. So when you go to these things, which I was doing in Lisbon, and even when I moved there and I did the same thing in Bali where I was like, posted a picture of myself. I posted in an all girls group just for safety reasons here.
That's smart.
Yeah. But I posted like a photo of myself and I said, hi, like I'm new to Lisbon. I like these things. Like, does anyone want to be my friend? Essentially, it sounds so corny, but everyone's like, yeah, like let's go for a coffee. Let's go for a walk. Let's go for a glass of wine. Like everyone really wants to connect. And it was in those moments where you learn more about, what is the process of staying here and what does that look like? And what are the different hoops I have to jump through? And what are those secret little hacks that you have to actually get a phone call with Ima or whatever those things are, right? And so yeah, there's a great community. And so when I was in Lisbon, I really started to discover that more and more.
Yeah, you have to put yourself out there. It's so true because like you're moving to a new country and people are already there and existing and have a community, but like there's a like mindset that everyone has because you have left your home country, right? So it's like but you have to put yourself out there to start meeting people and then figure out who you really enjoy hanging out with, right?
Oh my gosh, totally. If you don't put yourself out there, you will just stay at your place, you're staying at, you're renting, whatever, and you'll wander around and I love solo travel. I think it's great. But if you're only ever in this kind of solo travel, I'm not going to be anyone mindset, it's going to be tough. It's going to feel lonely. It's going to be isolating. And like you said, you have to be really intentional about putting yourself out there. And thankfully, and in places like Portugal, there's so many opportunities for you to meet people. And everyone is so warm and loving and kind. Like you can walk into a room of total strangers and people will be like, oh, where are you from? Why'd you move here? And you'll notice how similar so many people's stories are. They wanted to come here to try something different. They wanted to change the life that they had, get out of that rat race or retire here and finally have a sense of freedom, maybe for the first time in their life. So you find so many commonalities with other people. And before you know it, now you're being invited out for drinks, multiple times a week. You end up having to turn things down because you have so much going on. But you have to be really intentional about putting yourself out there and taking those first steps. Otherwise, you'll just end up staying in your place and you won't like it for sure. You won't like living here because you'll be isolated and lonely.
It'll be hard. Yeah. Would you say you're an extrovert?
It's funny. A few years ago, I would have said no. I would have said I'm definitely an introvert. But I realized how much of that was just me not feeling confident and not feeling comfortable around people and how much I was trying to perform to make people like me. It was very like perfectionist vibes, which is exhausting, right? If you're always trying to be another version of yourself, it's very draining. And so I would have said a few years ago, yes, but I would say now I'm more of an ambivert. Like I do like to recharge on my own. I do have to psych myself up a little bit to go and talk to a group of new people, just because I think that's intimidating for anyone. But no, living abroad has also given me so much more confidence and being social and meeting new people. So I'd say I'm definitely an ambivert now after moving abroad.
That's good to know though, because I think that like you don't have to be an extrovert to put yourself out there, right? Because I think that might make, some people might feel uncomfortable, like, oh my gosh, I'm an introvert, or you have to recharge, like you were saying. I know a lot of people like that who like, they would say, I'm not an extrovert when you're out, but it's like you seem so comfortable. And they're like, yeah, but like in an hour, I'm going to go home and I need like my downtime. I'm like, I totally get that.
Like powering down.
Yeah, just like me and my time. And it's like, yeah, that totally makes sense. So you don't have to be this like super outgoing, extroverted, will talk to anyone kind of person to put yourself out there. There's different like levels and variations to it. So you have to find what you're comfortable with, or else that also too will be tough. You'll feel maybe very uncomfortable all the time. And at that point too, you might not like blame the city or the country because of that uncomfortable feeling when it's not that. Maybe you're just putting too much pressure on yourself. So finding that good balance is important too.
Totally. And it's finding your people, right? The first people that you're connecting with or people that you're meeting on the weekends for drinks who ask you out again, those might not be your people if it's exhausting, right?
So
it's
true.
Don't have this kind of scarcity mindset of like, just because I found these people and they invited me out, this means I have to only be friends with these people, or this is my group now. It's like, no,
Mhm.
like you have the autonomy to go and meet new people and say no to people, to say yes to something else. So there's so many people here and in the world and all over that are going to match the energy output that you're comfortable with. And so, yeah, keep going to new events, keep meeting new people. I don't want to say the word settle because that sounds bad, but like don't fall into this kind of trap of like, oh, I met these people, I have to like cling on to them as my people, as my new family, even if they're not what, makes sense for you.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Okay, so how long were you in Lisbon before you felt drawn to Porto? And what actually kind of like, what was going on that drew you to Porto to go up for a weekend?
Yeah, it wasn't long. It was only maybe, because this was still during my 3 months. This was like maybe 4 weeks, five weeks ish. And it sounds rather dramatic, but I'd been meditating and I just had this feeling of like, go to Porto for the weekend. And so I went to book a train and it was all booked out because it was like right before. And then I ended up booking a bus, and on the bus there was no bathrooms, which I didn't realize at the time. It was going to be like 3.5 hours. They were stopping in Coimbra. It was going to be, and I was like, oh my God. So I said to the bus driver, I'm like, do I have time to go pee? And he's like, no. And I was like, perfect.
Great, yeah.
Don't panic. So I was just like softly crying in my seat. So I was like, what do you do? And yeah, and then I found myself on Bumble, and I was just like swiping to distract myself at the time with no real intentionality, but just bored. And I matched with my now husband. Yeah, and so we went on a date last night. He saw that I was a digital nomad. He's like, oh, I've always wanted to travel the world and explore. Like, do you want to meet for a glass of wine tonight and talk about it? And I said, sure. And then I tried to back out of it because I'd been walking all around Porto that whole day. And it was like 30,000 steps, I'd like done the whole bit. And he's like, let's meet for a glass of wine. And I was like, trying to cancel. And anyways, long story short, we met. It was great. And yeah, and then not long later, I moved in here into Porto, into our other apartment, and things escalated quickly. But now we're married.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So tell us how quick then. So you were only there for the weekend. You had already bought like your return bus.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, but then you just, obviously it was a good night. You kept talking.
Yeah. So we met on I think it was the Friday, I want to say, the night. And then on the Saturday, I was like, I want to go to a wine tasting, but I'm all by myself. So I messaged him because we had a great night together, but I was like, I don't know what this person wants, but I was like, whatever, put yourself out there. So I was like, I'm going to go to a wine tasting today. Like, do you want to join me? He's like, yeah, let's do it. So he met me for that. And then we ended up just talking and walking along the river in Porto, which is like beautiful. And like the sun was setting. I was like, oh,
how
so
romantic.
I know. I was like, oh la la. And then I was supposed to go back, and he's like, no, I'll pay for you to stay another night at a hotel so I can see you again tomorrow. So we did that. And then the next weekend he came up to Porto, and the next weekend I went up to Lisbon, and we just kept going back and forth. And then it was starting to get closer to Christmas. And I said, okay, I'm going to go back to Canada for Christmas for a month. Can I like leave my stuff here at your house instead of like paying for another apartment? And then essentially like it ended up me moving in there. But I got a visa for Portuguese language classes. So he knew a way for me to get like an extension visa for me to have classes. So I was taking classes like a couple times a week. That was my visa. And so when I was back in Canada over Christmas, I got like a year visa just for that. And so that went from, I have the visa, and then it was like, okay, do I get my own apartment in Porto? And it's like, well, my stuff is already here. Maybe I'll just stay here. And so yeah, I ended up moving in, and then a few years later we got married.
Yeah, that is smart. Okay, but your now husband, he's an immigration lawyer, right?
Yeah, crushed it on my end. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, when you met, was he already he was already doing that? So that's kind of how he knew this student visa would work?
Totally. Yeah. He knew the ins and outs because I had been calling and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing and how this all works. So yeah, it was like a specific type of short-term extension visa where I could take private Portuguese classes once a week.
Oh, nice.
And
so it wasn't even like through like a public university classes?
No, because that's what I was originally looking for. And then no, it was like this certified language class here in Porto. And then I got this short-term extension visa for like, it was for a whole year. It really should have been only for the duration of classes, which is like, I think 6 months or something. But they granted it for the full year. So then all of a sudden I had that for the whole year. And then when it expired, they weren't able to update visas anymore at the time because there was like this weird thing going on. It was like post-COVID, and they were unable to do extensions on the visa. So if you had an expired visa, you basically, I had to show this paper at the airport. It's like manifesto something, I don't know. And it'd basically be like, yeah, we can't actually update this visa because of COVID system
Everything going on, yeah.
blah blah. So just show this at the airport. So then I used that visa for like another, I don't know, over a year for sure.
Yeah, because they kept doing visa extensions, so that's what that is actually. That still goes on because that's something that's really tricky for people as well right now. Is like they get either the initial approval for like the D78, let's say, or they need to renew their temporary residency after 2 years, but they're not able to get these appointments. So some of it was COVID, some of it was a switch over from SEF to IMA. So they just said, let's just do this overarching visa extension for everyone. So that was it worked out really well for you, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, when you came in and out of the airport, you just have to show that, and they're like, oh, okay, we get it. Did you ever have any problems doing that? Because I know that that's a concern of people of like, well, I have an expired visa, but they're supposed to let me in. Did you ever have any problems?
Yeah. So actually, when I don't know if I was I think I was coming back from Canada at some point, and this was a situation, and the officer was like, well, this is expired, this isn't good anymore. And he went to go, I don't know if he was going to go give me a fine or something, but thankfully my husband had printed out the paperwork that's saying like, nope, this is like, there's an extension right now, blah, blah, blah. And it had been highlighted, and I just handed it to him, and he was like, oh, okay. So thankfully I had those papers, because I was like, I don't know. Like, I'm just going off of what people told me in terms of being able to get back into the country. So thankfully it wasn't an issue, but I would say when in doubt, maybe have something on paper and highlighted and written out, just cross all your T's and dot all your I's. Because sometimes I'm not sure if they want to not help you in some way. I don't know quite how to say that, but yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's really a good idea though. Get something from the lawyer that says like, no, this is the law right now. They know it. Like, it's obviously their jobs. They know it. I don't know why. I mean, maybe they want to make sure that you know it. I don't know. Again, they want to, okay, you've got proof. Okay. So you do know, you're not just like trying to get in thinking that it will work, but like, it, right?
Yeah. Well, I think there is a lot of people that are kind of trying to sneak through the cracks of the system for good and maybe not so good. So I think, they're just trying to make sure that everyone is doing what they're supposed to do. But it can be kind of scary in those moments when you're like, oh, I know I don't have the right things, but this is what I was told. So I'd say when in doubt, have something kind of written down, and so that you can show to them, and that way they know, and then also for your own peace of mind.
Right. Yeah. How's your Portuguese then? Like, you were doing lessons once a week. At that cadence, and that was, I guess, a while ago.
Nothing happens at that cadence, I'll tell you. It's enough to just be frustrated with yourself. Because, I remember learning this last week, but I have no retention of it. So, no, if you're really trying to learn Portuguese, once a week is going to do absolutely nada for you. But now I take it twice a week, but it's always but it's hard. And I'm learning now Brazilian Portuguese because my husband's family is from Brazil, and they don't speak really English. And so I've been taking Portuguese classes from a Portuguese teacher, which is great. But the accent, if people have heard the difference between Brazilian Portuguese and Portuguese, it's very different. Some of the verbs are different. The words are different. Yeah, the accent's very different. And so when I was visiting Brazil, I was like, I don't know what's happening at all. I was like, I've been taking all these classes, and I'm like, it's just, I don't understand. And so when I came back, I started taking classes from a teacher from Brazil, which I think the Brazilian accent is easier because it's a lot more open. It's a lot more clear, I think, to understand. But then here, the opposite of that is like, I sometimes I don't know what people are saying to me on the street. I'll take my dog for a walk, and a nice older, Portuguese couple will stop me to talk with the dog. And I'm just like, oh, no.
I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. But it's not bad. Eu posso falar mais muito bem. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. Good. Okay. So is your husband's family in Portugal, or just you had this epiphany when you went to visit in Brazil?
When I went to visit in Brazil, because I speak Portuguese here, but they'll often look at my face and go, okay, you're not Portuguese. You're probably not Brazilian Portuguese. So they'll switch to English. And even if I really want to practice, they'll often switch. And so I found I was speaking most of my Portuguese with his family and when I was visiting. And so I was like, I might as well do that, practice that one. It's easier to understand, and then kind of using that as my jumping off point. So that's more or less why I did that. But no, they're all back in Brazil, but they come over quite frequently. So we saw them for like a month at Christmas, and they pop over here. They really like it here. They want to actually move here to Porto. So they're looking at places at some point. So yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah. Well, how long has your husband been here? And does he now have Portuguese citizenship? Because you said at the beginning Brazilian Portuguese, but he's from Brazil, has been living in Portugal for a while and has citizenship, or what's his route like?
Yeah, so he's been here for 7-8 years now. He's been here a while. His his grandpa, I always get this wrong, is Portuguese. So he was able to get it through getting his mom the citizenship, and then he got citizenship. So when he came here, or not long after, he was able to actually get Portuguese citizenship. So he has 2 passports. So again, on my end, crushed it.
Smart.
Locked that in. Yeah. So yeah, he has both nationalities, which is great.
Yep. Yeah. So then are you going through the process to get your Portuguese citizenship now?
I will, but we still it takes a little bit more time for me to there's a couple of years that it has to go by and all that. So still early days yet in terms of being able to actually apply, but we will at some point. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you just apply because you're married to him. You don't have to do anything special. Exactly. Do you have to take a language test or no?
I think I do. I'm pretty sure I do. I think my understanding is it's similar process, and I could be wrong. Don't quote me on this, but I think it's similar process. People who have been here for like, the 5 years or whatever it is in terms of what that looks like. But I think mine's just like a bit more expedited because I am married. But I think there is still the language test. I'm on I have a residence card right now, but that'll eventually that'll transition once I do all that. But yeah, for right now, it's like a similar process in terms of what I can and can't do. So yeah. Okay. But again, I leave it all to him.
Yeah, I know. You don't even have to think about it. How nice is that? People probably listen to this and be like, are you kidding me? Like, that's what I should have done, is married an immigration lawyer.
I know. Yeah, I know. That's my tip. That's my best tip for moving to Portugal, is just marry an immigration lawyer.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. That's funny. Yeah. So we get to apply this fall. We can apply for citizenship because we'll have been here through the 5 years. But yeah. Still a long road ahead though, because it's takes like a year and a half or so to process. So hopefully yours is faster than that.
Yeah, hopefully we'll see. But yeah, hopefully yours goes quickly as well.
You never know with the bureaucracy here, though.
You do not know. No, you can say something's going to take a month and it takes a year. You just, or the opposite. You just don't know. Yeah.
Well, where did you get married? Did you get married in Portugal or Canada or Brazil? What'd you do?
We got married in the south of Spain, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're it's equally inconvenient for everyone coming from Canada and from Brazil. And so, yeah, we found a beautiful little Spanish casa villa place kind of near Malaga, about an hour-ish up the coast. So, yeah, we got married there. We had a small wedding, and it was we had the venue for 3 days. It was actually, we found, less expensive to get married in Spain than it was in Portugal.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because we looked at all the venues there, and there was kind of we noticed there was kind of 2 different camps. One was these wineries where you're just to rent it, you're paying 20,000 euros without anything included. Or it was very, very cute, very quaint, little quinta, little winery, but they're very plastic chair, very, that kind of thing. We wanted something a bit more in the middle. So we found ourselves in Spain, and it was amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
And family was able to come?
Everyone was able to come. We drove down in a car. It was a 9-hour drive, and threw everything in. And yeah, it was awesome. Yeah, it was so much fun. My family, they love Europe, so it's great. They get another reason to visit.
Good. Yeah. Okay. You said car. Do you own a car, or did you just rent? You just rented it to go?
That was a rental, an automatic rental, which is even more expensive, and in the summer, and cross-border fees. So no, that was we definitely we had to rent. It's just, we live in the Porto, we live in Boa Vista, which is kind of midway between the ocean of Matosinhos, people listening, and kind of downtown Porto. So there's metro, there's Ubers that are very reasonable. I had a bike, it was stolen. Unfortunately, that's happening a bit more. I know. I was it was locked outside of my CrossFit gym, and then someone literally just cut the whole bar.
What? It was even locked and they cut the bar? Wow. Yeah. What kind of bike was it? Was it really nice?
Not even. And it was funny. I ordered all these stickers that said, this is GPS tracked, which it wasn't. I just bought stickers for $1 and then stuck it on it. I was this will deter them. But anyway, so I did have a bike, and that was good. But no, so I just walk everywhere, take Ubers. And
Mhm.
Ubers can go quite far. Like I go hiking with our dog in Valongo, which is this like beautiful hiking area. It's like 25-minute drive from here. It's like a 12 euro pet taxi for me to get there and back.
Yeah, talk
So
about that with the pet, because I think that is a concern. A lot of people will bring their dogs over, but they don't want a car. And I've known some friends who just said, you know what, we're just going to buy a car because it's such a pain trying to get an Uber with their dog. So tell us about that.
yeah, so I can only speak from my experience of having a smaller dog. We have a miniature dachshund who
Okay.
likes to pretend he has a huge personality. He's like doesn't know he's a small dog, but in fact he is. But he, like, I have a little sling that I bought like off Amazon, and I just plop him in there. We've had absolutely no problems. I know some other friends who have dogs that are like a little bit bigger, but that can still kind of fit into that kind of satchel thing, and they can take their dog all the way around. You can take your dog on the metro here. So quite dog friendly in that sense. There's a lot of like restaurants you can go. There's a lot of, not a ton, but there are some outdoor dog parks here. People always have their dogs off leash on the beaches and walking around and stuff. So it's a great place to have a dog, I think. But in terms of getting in and out of Ubers and stuff, like we've had absolutely no problems with having this kind of dog sling. If you have a larger dog, they might be a little bit kind of iffy of it. But if you have like a smaller to even like maybe more medium sized dog, as long as almost like think of those pictures of when people are on the metro or the subway in New York, and they have those dogs. It's like the dog policy, you know, they see these like huskies in like an IKEA bag. So I don't know if you could like quite, have you seen those? Like their legs are like sticking out. Oh my
That's
gosh, look it
funny.
up. It's so funny.
Okay.
But I don't know if you could quite get away with like putting your giant dog in like an IKEA blue bag with like the feet cut out or something here. Might not get
That's
away
funny.
with that. But yeah, we've had no problems for that. So, you know, but again, you can take the metro with your dog. It's a very walkable city. So depending on where you live, you might be just fine not having a car if you have a dog.
Do you book a different, like a pet Uber or
Yeah.
just a regular Uber?
Pet Uber. It's a
the pet
little
one,
bit
yeah.
more expensive, like a couple euros more sometimes not even. But yeah, they're the drivers who are like, no, it's okay. Basically,
It's
that you have
okay.
a dog. So yeah, and you have that for Uber and for Bolt, which is kind of like the other version that we always like to switch between depending on what's cheaper at the time.
Oh yeah, which one's doing a promotion, which one's
Exactly.
cheaper on the time.
My
Yeah,
husband
so
are
true.
like, I have 30% off. Okay, go with this one. And on the way home, it's like, yeah, no, you gotta use the apps.
We do the exact same thing. It's like checking both, and both of us are checking because, like, yeah, sometimes someone has like a really good promotion, and you're just like, yeah, you book then, yeah.
Deal. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so you live in the Boa Vista area, and was that the place that you moved into initially, or after you got married, you moved somewhere else, or why did you choose Boa Vista?
So we were initially kind of near Trindade, which is like the metro, which is very central location in Porto. We'd been just up from that. It wasn't, for me, it wasn't like this was where I wanted to live per se. It was super busy. It was the top of a hill. Thankfully, going places, I'd be going downhill. But coming up with groceries and stuff, oh my God, it was just dripping sweat. And it was good in terms of being close to things, but it was a bit busy. It was a bit maybe too not fast paced in some ways for me. Grew up in the woods in Canada, so I'm like still not even used to living in a city. So it was quite central, a lot of car horns and that kind of thing. And we just didn't have a very big apartment. It wasn't super bright, lots of lights in it. It was like kind of the older ones that have a lot of wood. And so, yeah, so then we wanted to move more to Boa Vista, which is where we are now. Just a bit more open. The roads are wider. So where we were before, it's like a lot of that cobblestone roads, which are quite small. So you're trying to pass people and you're kind of like doing this weird single file walk into traffic situation, especially during tourist season where it's just like, it could be quite busy. So yeah, there's just a lot more space here. We're kind of midway between Porto and Matosinhos, the ocean. So like we'll walk down to the park de Cidade, which is this huge, beautiful park there. And that's right next to the ocean. So we have a nice kind of midway between both where we can go to. And there's also just a lot of nice restaurants here. There's good gyms here. It's a great place to live. There's a lot of nice little neighborhoods as well. We'll take our dog for a walk that aren't busy car-wise. So I would say it's just a bit kind of more relaxed than kind of downtown Porto, which I really like.
Yeah. Now, do you find it's a little less connected, like the metro and I mean, there's more buses out there, but like, would you say that one thing that could be tricky is that it's not, maybe, are you close to a metro stop over there, or is it a little far away?
Thankfully, we're not too far. I'm like maybe, I think it's like 900 meters from Frankfurt, maybe 1 just over a kilometer maybe. So it's like a 10-minute walk to the metro. So it's not bad. It's really not. There is lots of buses, but I'm not a really big girl. Like I'm not a big bus person. I don't know. I don't like waiting for buses. They're so unpredictable. Like metro,
They
it's like, you know,
are.
when they're coming. But buses, it's like, they said this was to be here 20 minutes ago. And it's just like, ugh. So no, thankfully we can take the metro, which is super close. But if it's not rush hour, then it's usually quite reasonable to take an Uber, or you can walk depending on the day. Sometimes I'll walk from Porto to here. It's like a 40-minute walk, but it's downhill. It's chill. If it's a nice day, then like pop in my earphones. That's a thing. That's another big thing that's so different culturally from where I grew up in Canada and versus here. It's like everything was just like a highway. You know, everything was so spread out. Nothing was walkable. It often didn't feel safe to walk places. Versus here, it's so nice. You can, like, even if it takes you an hour, you can do it and feel safe the whole time. You're on sidewalks. You don't feel concerned. There's no highways you have to cross that feel stressful. So that's another nice thing about being here is you don't need to have a car. And it's so nice to not have to get into cars all day long. Like I love the weeks or the days that I'm not getting into Ubers or anything. So it's just, I don't know, there's just something so nice to be able to get somewhere on your own 2 feet, the grocery store, the dentist, the everything. That's the thing as well. Like there's so many, all the things you need are in walking distance. So I can get everywhere and never have to get into a car, which I love.
Yeah. Now, compare Lisbon and Porto for us. I mean, you've been in Porto longer, but you did land initially in Lisbon and you said you loved it and it was great, kind of the entry point for Portugal for you.
Yeah.
What's the difference between the two? Which one do you like better? Tell our audience what you think between the two.
Yeah, well, I first want to say they've both changed a lot since I first landed.
True.
But at the time, Lisbon was great because I was single. So I didn't know anyone and I didn't have anyone that I was with. And there was a lot more going on at the time. There's a lot more meetups. There's a lot more kind of events. There was just a lot more things to do as someone who didn't know someone and was just, you know, by myself and wanted to meet new people. And if I met a partner, great. But that was kind of a great place for me to be that had a lot of activity, a lot of things going on. It had more of that kind of energy of if you were new or single to be there. Now I know people who live there and they love it, but it is a lot busier. It's a lot more fast paced. There is a lot going on, but it can maybe be a bit overwhelming. So Porto, especially now, it's really, I think it's wonderful. Like you have everything you need. There is now more of these social events going on. There is tons of meetups. Like there's so much going on. It's hard to even pick what you're going to do each weekend or evening. And yeah, if you're single, or if you have a family, whatever, like Porto is a great place to meet all of those needs. Whereas before, I think it might've been a bit more difficult to be in Porto and not know anyone just because I think it was a bit harder to meet people. It wasn't, a couple of years back, it wasn't quite as happening, I would say. But that's totally changed now. So I think Porto for me is great because it's a bit slower paced than Lisbon. It still has all the things you might ever need in a big city without that kind of more of a hectic kind of energy. But again, obviously I'm biased because I live in Porto. If you talk to someone who lives in Lisbon, you're going to get a totally different story. So yeah, but that's just kind of my interpretation of it. But I'll go to Lisbon to go to like a concert or go to a play or whatever. And it's great. Or go, have some different types of foods that maybe they don't have here. Like here, I'm having a very hard time finding Greek food. So if anyone listening wants to open a Greek food restaurant or knows of one, let me know.
Yeah. That is a hard one to find here. Do you know a good one in Lisbon? Is there something good in Lisbon?
I mean, I don't know a ton in Lisbon. I don't remember, to be honest. Like I remember going to get it there. I can't think of the name. I would have to. I know they do. I just can't think of the name off the top of my head. But I'm going to London next month, and I'm like already planning. I'm like, I can't wait to go get Greek food. I'm so excited. But Porto has pretty much everything you need except Greek food.
Well, I have to say I asked you Lisbon versus Porto because I knew that you'd be biased towards Porto.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I mean, you're here. It's been years. But that's kind of how we are too. I mean, yeah, Lisbon is for some people, but like for us, we are Porto people and we love Porto. But it has changed a lot in the past couple of years, not necessarily for bad, but just gotten a lot busier. I mean, Porto has made lists of like top places in Europe to visit. So we see so much more tourism going on, a lot more people moving here. So it's just changed a little bit, but not been bad, just different. Right?
Yeah, it's changed. The pricing has gone up a lot. Housing crisis, unfortunately, has gone up a lot. Like there's a lot of great things about cities kind of being discovered it in a new way, but it's also, I think we need to also acknowledge like it's tough for people who are for locals, and even people who move here, like just being conscientious of the language you use around pricing of things and not saying things like, oh, it's so cheap, blah, blah, blah. Like, 'cause that's really insulting to people who are here, living here, and especially the wages that need to be higher for the local people, to be able to afford the cost of living. So yeah, it's changed a lot, some for good, some for bad, but make sure if you are moving here that you're really respectful of those differences for the people whose lives you're, kind of coming into.
Right. Yeah. And it's kind of a global thing. I mean, now that we are
Totally.
more mobile, easier to move around, easier to move to places, especially with the pandemic and people being able to work remotely and companies being okay with that. Like we see a lot of changes going on in different cities. So yeah, just being mindful that some people don't resist it, but like have to adapt to it because they're not used to it, right? Because 5 years ago it was different. So just being mindful of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so earlier you talked about how you were in the rat race, and then you hit rock bottom, and you went to Bali, and you found yourself, and you like what instead of the external like gratification, you had to do inward, and now that's actually what you help people with, right?
Yeah. So for years, I worked with people going through their own recovery. And then once I kind of finished that kind of phase of my life, just because I struggled with food and body stuff my whole life. And then I went through recovery. And then I worked people in recovery and disordered eating recovery for 7 years. And I was kind of like, okay, I'm more than just this narrative. And so, yeah, so I kind of pivoted a little bit to the work, which is, I talk about it as radical self-care, which is not that kind of like performative, how you show up for yourself, but rather that kind of deep, kind of messier, not usually Instagrammable work of like undoing the perfectionism, understanding what you truly want out of life, understanding how to set boundaries, understanding, diet culture and trying to shrink yourself, and dieting is a means for control, and how the patriarchy has been used to keep women small and distracted. And that type of work is really what I focus on now. And yeah, it's so fulfilling, and it's all about coming home to yourself. And like you said, home is wherever you are. But if we don't do some of that work of understanding who we are, anywhere in the world can feel a bit lonely and a bit like it's not hitting the mark, because we're always looking for something to kind of fulfill us, but we're never going to have something outside of ourselves. Even if you move across the world, that's going to sometimes make up for what we're feeling we're lacking internally. And so a lot of my work, yeah, talks around like perfectionism, boundaries, diet culture, emotional regulation, talking about nervous system regulation, all that type of stuff. So framed as radical self-care, which is basically all the work of like how to come home to yourself and unlearn a lot of the things that we were taught and sold to believe about ourselves, so that we can kind of rebuild that trust with ourselves and really embody it moving forward.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I'm excited. I'm going to be on your podcast. We'll be recording that in a month or so. But yeah, so I get to go on there and chat with you, which will be good as well. But if people want to get in touch with you, we'll put your links in the description in the show notes. But just if someone wants to talk to you, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so probably the best place would be Instagram. It's Victoria Evans Official. And so you can find me there, send me a message. I will respond back to you if you have any questions or you want to know anything. I just wrote my book and launched my book, so you can also
Congrats.
get that. Thank you. If you want to read that, and I talk a bit more about my journey as well in terms of like leaving that corporate life and moving abroad and kind of what that looks like. So you might see yourself a little bit in that if you're wanting to take that journey, or you already have. And yeah, and then my website, www.victoriaevansofficial.com. There's more resources there, and you can connect with me. And then my podcast, which you'll be on, is Weighing In on Happy. So yeah, but I know you said it'll be all below, but more than happy if you guys have any questions that I can answer. Yeah.
Great. Well, at Expats Everywhere, we believe living abroad transforms lives. And I do feel like living abroad has transformed your life, but can you explain how?
I think it's really allowed me to explore who I truly am. Because sometimes when you're in an environment that you grew up in, or an environment that you are living the expectations of who you think you should be, you lose yourself, and you don't have the time and capacity and the opportunity to really discover who you are and who you could be in a new environment. So moving abroad for me meant being able to rediscover and reconnect with myself in ways that I don't think I necessarily could have done if I was staying in the same place where I had always been. So I think it's a really beautiful opportunity to show up for yourself and come home to yourself in a way that you didn't necessarily know was possible.
Well, Victoria, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.